Welcome back to another Chit Chat series. You're listening to Andres, and then we also have Tony, Des, and Nate. Desi's not very happy with me because we compiled a list of dietitians, which actually this could be like the conversation of, or like the beginning of this conversation here today. So for people listening in, yesterday I decided to post, or if you listen to my previous, I think it's an episode that we published like a couple of weeks ago by the time that this is releasing, I released a new episode podcast that talked about Florida and Florida state legislature, and essentially the governor saying that now anybody in Florida can provide nutrition advice, personalized nutrition advice for weight management and stuff like that, as long as that person is not under medical supervision or or has a medical condition. So essentially, I decided to compile a list because CrossFit HQ took that to ownership because like of the person that started this whole thing was a CrossFit gym owner. So anyways, long story short, you can go back to that episode to listen to it. But I decided to compile a list of a bunch of dietitians, some of the dietitians that are working either with CrossFit athletes, are CrossFit athletes, coach CrossFit, something related to CrossFit, and how are they helping other people. And I compiled that list, and I decided to post in 2 different Facebook communities that, basically most dietitians are there. And I failed to include one of our important members of our Chit Chat series, Dezi Abeyta, which is like, if you can see this on YouTube right now, he's not looking very happy. And it's not,
I'm not.
It was not a personal thing. It's just simply the fact that I went based on the comments that I received from people, and you read my post and you decided not to engage. So can't really help anything.
Let me give a little bit of background. Let me give a little bit of background for our listeners between the friendship that I've been able to create organically with Andres. So about 2 years ago,
organic, not paid.
Yeah, not
paid. Bought.
Okay. Yeah. So 2 years ago, we started randomly chatting because we really connected with this letter assignment of developing some goals for the year ahead. And so we just started like chatting. He had me on the podcast the first time I was on here, and we just became the best of friends. We've gone to different business retreats, room together like buddies, really developed that relationship. And I can tell you very, very adamantly for our listeners right now that when I'm about to tag something in some type of post, I have a list of about 6 names that come up all the time. And I just don't ever forget them. One of those is Andres. The second one is Tony. Third one is Nate. We got Jenna Werner. We got Alex Turoff, and we got Tony Marinucci. Those are just the first 6 that always come up. So like naturally, like, oh, bam, bam, bam. Those are the homies. So when I didn't see my name, it wasn't really that I was mad. I was just hurt, Andres. I was hurt.
And you decided to hit the record button to share all some of the stuff?
So you hurt me. With that being said, I'm never going to let this go. Let's fight. Let's just get into the topic.
Apologies. They actually discussed of doing a rap battle, which I think Nate and I would highly like to see. Yeah.
Drop the beat.
But anyways, so that's what's been going on, guys. But I don't want to, and we talked about this earlier, not to be in this horse to dead and talking about the legislation and stuff. But I just kind of wanted to kind of go around the table here and just get your maybe like your 1 to 2 minute opinions on this and what is your stand. So people also can listen to from you guys. We have like obviously 3 Florida dietitians in here, and then we have Dezi that is in Arizona. I'm not sure what the laws are actually in there, but maybe just kind of like share your 2 cents on this stance on this process, or this when you kind of read through all this. And I think all of us in here either do CrossFit, have done CrossFit, or understand it.
I mean, for me, I read it. I didn't read the whole legislation, but obviously listening to your take and everything else, to me, honestly, and this is just a little bit more of like the industry of dietetics taking a step back and just allowing people to do whatever the F they want. To me, it was like status quo, because in Arizona, CrossFit athletes, nutrition coaches, like they can do whatever they want. And so when I heard that, it was like, oh, this is just a taste of what's going on elsewhere as well. And it's frustrating. It's extremely frustrating, because I think overall, we talked about this a while ago, like there are really great dietitians and really bad ones in the same way that there are really great nutrition coaches and really bad ones. So it's not really bashing on the industry. It's just a frustration that I have for all of the work that we had to do to get to where we are. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, hey, guess what? You guys are at an even playing field. So while I am disappointed, I'm more disappointed in the academy, to be honest. So I'm a little bit more status quo on it. Like, oh, this was already happening.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think I'm disappointed based on obviously the work that we've all put in to acquire our accreditation and be the nutrition experts in the field, because we could have taken the other path, right? We could have just been like, oh, we're just going to splurge and, whatever, just word vomit a bunch of advice, but we chose to kind of become the experts and really dive into the field. So from that aspect, I agree, where I feel like the industry took a step back, and I don't know if the academy did everything that they could to kind of back up our profession, which is disappointing. But at the same token, going on the basis of like the status quo, like people are going to get their nutrition advice anywhere that they want. And I think it should be a wake-up call to us dietitians to be a little bit louder and to do everything that we can to get on platforms that some of these non-dietitian, more nutrition BS pushers are on. And ultimately we just need to be talking a little bit louder. And so though the circumstances suck, it is what it is. And I've always been a proponent of like, we need to figure out how we can get dietitians on the pedestal that a lot of these other non-RDs that, shake their rear ends on Instagram and flex their muscles on Instagram. And that's what's selling people. We need to be above that. And we need to always be above that and never succumb to that level just to try to catch the viewer's attention. I think all of us on this Chit Chat series does a great job with putting science first. And I think we just need to stick to that. We just may need to be a little bit more creative in how we are attracting attention and how we're getting people's attention when you compare it to these other individuals.
100%.
So Nate is not going to be shaking his ass on Instagram to get more followers, just so you know.
Only on TikTok.
Oh, dude, and he gets it.
But I mean, that's a great platform for us to really showcase like our true personalities and just like showcase another side of us that maybe Instagram doesn't really capture. And I think, thinking outside the box, and, we all do a great job on TikTok, and we all, convey our messages in different ways. We have to just do more of that and just really get out there in front of people.
Not me. I need TikTok help.
I don't think that you do, man. You're hilarious. I feel like this is like the classic example. Like, just be yourself, but for real. just
be yourself.
I laugh at you all the freaking time. You're hilarious.
Thank you.
So,
laugh at me, not with me. So
you're probably a little bit inappropriate, but
I've never been told that before. But anyways, back to what we were talking about. With the statute, this has been happening behind closed doors. The guy that actually helped me film my Captain Hydrate series, he goes to a CrossFit in St. Pete, and he's working with someone who's not a dietitian, and this has been happening. There's nothing I can do. I'm not going to chase after him. We're not going to chase after anyone that wants to get advice from a CrossFit coach that only gets maybe a semester of, a weekend of nutrition coaching.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the great things, I went to go work out at Andres's CrossFit. And one of the things he told me was like, hey, there's already because I asked him, why aren't you working with them already? This was a couple years ago. He's like, well, they already have like a nutritionist here, but she was someone who's focused on pregnancy, and she wasn't a dietitian. Funny enough, Andres started going. He started giving tips here and there to some of their coaches, and they saw how much more informed, how much more science he had behind him, and how much more his results his clients were getting because he knew what he was talking about. So sometimes it's just that the CrossFit needs to be open to who we are, just as we need to be open to who they are, right? So I think it's both sides of the coin, that sometimes as dietitians, we come in hot trying to spew everything we know, because we do know a lot and we want to share a lot of great information, but the CrossFit community, at least where some dietitians are, just aren't ready for it. So we just have to just be there, be present, and continue to give the best information and help when we can. So I do truly admire that Andres did that. And I can say in my CrossFit community, they've been open to me going to give talks. They've been open to me to actually run like a group coaching because they know I'm the nutrition professional. And the coaches there do ask me questions. There's other people there that do ask me questions. Now, is there someone there that's a precision nutrition coach? Yeah. Does she have anyone that works there? I don't know, because I'm not trying to compare myself to anyone else. All we can do is better ourselves and better our community, and know that what we're doing is actually backed by science.
Yeah. So I guess like we could probably summarize into that. Like I think like what Nate's also said, like we had to step up our game, and it's what you're saying. Like, you know, people decided to go with me because I have been very vocal and I have been very, like, you know, showing up everywhere, being omnipresent. And as a registered dietitian, like every time I go on TikTok, it's like I'm a registered dietitian. Like I'm a registered dietitian, like, because that's the best way that we can kind of put ourselves out there. And some people would say, like, because I actually read an article, I think her name is Alexis, like, or Alex Lewis or something, and she wrote an article about, she went on a CrossFit forum and she wrote, like, I want you to know, I literally ask a question of what are your thoughts on dietitians? I just want to kind of get some information. Like, what are your thoughts? And literally a bigger percentage of people said they had negative experiences. And I think this goes back to like the way that our academia is set up for dietitians and the way that we have been taught, honestly. If we go by the specific standards established by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and we were practicing still by the same kind of level and the same standards like created by them, I don't think we will be progressing, and I think there will be a lot of other people taking our jobs that were not dietitians. So I think this is a call for all the RDs to learn how to, like, if you're working privately and working with one-on-one clients, you have to learn how to be a good coach, not just to have credentials after your name. Because if you're not a good dietitian, or not a dietitian that can level up with your clients and understand exactly what they're at and all those different things, then you shouldn't really be doing one-on-one coaching or one-on-one client work. Like maybe your call is to be a clinical dietitian, or maybe you need to be a research dietitian. Like
And that's
it's like
okay.
literally, yeah. And it's literally, like I said, like, dude, like if you go to a doctor and you got really terrible advice, and what do? You don't go to freaking like a trainer or somebody like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go with you because you know a little bit about medicine and you can prescribe a medication for me. No, like, you just simply go for a second opinion. You go for another doctor. Like the same thing with an accountant. You go for another accountant. Like it's the same thing with dietetics. There's always going to be some bad apples within a specific, you know, some bad apples in the tree. Like that's just the reality of it. And some people are going to connect better than others. So the long story short here is that, you know, become an informed consumer. And for dietitians, if you're listening to this, you need to step up your game and show up more, because you have to compete with a much more larger population or a group of people that are trying to not take away your job. They're trying to educate, which I support. They're just essentially trying to make a business out of their thing, and that may hurt some people if they're not doing it right. So
yeah.
So those are the main things. Sweet. Let's switch over to talk about the topic that Dezi doesn't know shit about. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
And it does seem kind of appropriate because we're talking about CrossFit athletes. So a lot of athletes want to do biohacking, right? That's what kind of tying that in.
Yeah. So, well, we're going to cut.
I thought we were doing the rap battle right now. I thought we were.
Dude, I'm so ready. You were so lucky you're on the opposite side of this nation. If I was like where TC is, like, dude, I'm coming over. Meet me in 15 minutes.
We're going to a CrossFit gym.
I feel like I'm gonna have to make like an actual post and like just with Des's face and like just to redeem myself. Anyway, so the concept of biohacking, I know it's something I think I started listening. You guys know who Ben Greenfield is? Like,
yeah, he's like the ultimate biohacker.
The ultimate biohacker. So like I've been listening to his podcast, like I think like for like I haven't in a while because I think he just got a little too commercial. But he was like posting a lot of podcasts on like all the things that he does, and like if he walks you through his house, is insane. Like he has like infrared saunas, and he has this like he has his like infrared thing that he would literally like, you know, flash in like his body, and like the blue light blocking glasses, and like the essential oils and all these different things. So and he believes in this concept called biohacking, which, you know, I'm just going to define it based on what I think the word means, which is essentially trying to hack your physiological systems into doing things that sometimes are just not, or like current environment doesn't really allow you to do, like sun exposure, sleep improvements, and overall with the main goal to improve your physiology and in a way that actually works more to support your health. I think that's the best way that I can literally look up a definition. But what have you guys heard of it?
I mean, I've had athletes, working with minor in Major League Baseball that really took a lot of what he did to heart. I forgot what the actual term is, but essentially they're getting their vitamin D naked. I mean, that they would do it, and they didn't care. It's because of what they heard, because of the testosterone boost that they get from different regions in the body that are getting that direct sunlight. So I mean, that's the experience I have with it, which they pointed me over to the podcast. And after listening to a couple episodes, like, I understand like how neurotic he is about this stuff, which caused me to do a little bit of research. So I can contribute to this topic now that he gets brought up.
Well, thanks for showing up, Dezi.
Yeah.
So my experience of biohacking was first when I worked in Major League Baseball. They had the Whoop band. So trying to understand how heart rate variability affects these players' performance and then recovery. And then personally, now working with one-on-one clients, I have a client that uses Aura rings. I have clients that use the Whoop. And right now I'm working with a company that's using a continuous glucose monitor, CGM, and how that my personal glucose is affected and my performance, and how that's affected by how I process certain foods. So I think it's actually a very cool way to learn about myself and then apply it to athletes as well.
I've really just used it for personal use, and through what clients have brought to me as well. I think it's a very unique field. I think it's obviously something that's a lot of different areas that are coming to light now. But I do a lot with like the sleep. I think we all kind of touch on sleep at some point, and we've personally done it, and we've exposed our clients to it as well. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all my experiences is with it.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of things, and there's different areas in which, like, biohacking can be encompassed in, but essentially it's taking a really deep look into your physiology and figure out a way that you can kind of like change it. So there's like the biohacking with the nutrition. There's like the biohacking when it comes down to your like actual like yourself, like meaning like your mindset, attention, like habits, like flow, memory, sleep, like all these different crazy things in which there are specific topics or specific strategies to kind of help get your body to optimally work, essentially what it is. So the case for Whoop, which I have one. So Antonio, you have one too. Do you have one? That's the Nate.
Yeah, mine's dead though.
Okay.
Did not try
Yeah.
it.
So essentially what it
I'm gonna
does,
buy one right now.
it's like this little super cheap, like honestly, because it's not like you're not really paying for this watch. You're paying for a subscription. You're paying for an algorithm. It's like constantly measuring your heart rate, like all day long. And they basically, like, what you're paying for is this company that created algorithms and how they interpret those heartbeats, the distance that exists between them, essentially how it kind of changes over time, how it changes at nighttime. And based on that, they created this algorithm that can kind of give you some information. For example, one of them has been heart rate variability. And a podcast recently I did with, I forgot his name, but he's an expert on this. He does a lot of research on these areas. And he talked about that basically heart rate variability, it's a really good measure and a good way for you to know and to determine readiness of your body. So essentially is a way for you to determine whether your body is in like a sort of like in a flight or fight or flight kind of mechanism. So if it's actually recovered or if it's actually in the process of recovering and it's not wise for you to maybe like push it too hard. I think we've always like talked about the fact that stress comes in different flavors and different colors, and some of it, like stress comes in from, for example, mental and emotional stress. We have the stress that comes from like physiological stress or metabolic, which is like when you put your body through a calorie deficit, you're restricting intake too much, or sometimes the stress comes from the physical standpoint, like it's actually punishing your body, doing training really hard, not really managing your volume. So the combination of all those things can have a huge impact. So I think the biohacking concept is essentially looking into that and figure out, okay, how can I optimize the way that I live through some like this data, acquisition and understanding how to interpret some of those things. Now, in your experience, like Tony and Nate, with the Whoop data, how have you used some of this information yourself?
Nate, you want to go first since you've had it longer?
Yeah. So I use it a lot, obviously, to assess like sleep performance. I like how it tracks respirations, and it's funny because during moments where like I've been sick, you can actually see the difference in respirations go up and down, and having an EMT background, like that data is pretty cool to see. Also from a recovery standpoint. So the Whoop actually tells you how you recovered. Actually, after Tony's birthday, I sent him a screenshot of my recovery and I was at 9%. I was in the red, like
Why? What
bad.
happened?
I don't think I've ever been in the red that low before. But yeah, so I think also obviously it because when you consume alcohol, heart rate variability can change as well. So it kind of looks at that and you get all this data from it as well. I don't know if you guys have you guys ever like defied your Whoop band when it says like recover and you're like, nah, fuck that. I'm going to go and do it. Yeah. So I did that, I think like twice. And one of the times I actually got injured. It was, yeah. So after that, I never did it again. I really, looked at my Whoop band with a different set of eyes, but, yeah. So, I mean, the data that I get from it obviously, I think for me, when I see that I have low recovery, I can like feel that. I can feel the difference in my body, and I see that the Whoop reflects that. So that's really what I use it for, mainly for that recovery and that sleep quality. Never defy your Whoop, people.
Nice.
For me personally, the Whoop, when I use it with clients, it helps me monitor their sleep, because if they're not maximizing their sleep, they're not going to get the PRs in the gym. No matter what we do nutritionally, like if we don't optimize sleep, we can't really focus on what's going on nutrition wise, right? Like make sure we get that down, because if they're trying to lean out or add muscle, they need to get adequate sleep. When I went down to Peru to talk to their Olympic athletes, I was like, it was about anti-doping. One of the things I talked about is like, what's the number one best performance enhancing drug? And it's sleep, right? It boosts your testosterone naturally. And a lot of athletes overlook it. So Whoop kind of helps hold that athlete accountable without us having stand over their bed like, all right, and Andres is going to sleep now. All right, and then you wake up. All right, he stopped going to sleep. How is his deep sleep? Like it gives us that feedback. So that's how I've used it with athletes, to show them like, hey, look, you've slept more and here's how you're performing, right? Like I have them relate it. And I say like, all right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your performance this week? Oh, it was a 10. All right, let's look at your sleep this past week, and it's been amazing. So it kind of goes hand in hand as an education tool for them, and then for myself as well. And the cool thing, I forget who that podcast was on this, but I listened to it, and what I took away from it is that sometimes our body tricks us into thinking we're recovered, because bodies have been around for thousands of years. So this gives us that feedback that we've been kind of needing, because sometimes our bodies ignore that we need recovery, and it tells us to keep pushing through it. Right. And that's happened to me. Like I remember I woke up one day and I was low recovery, and I'm like, man, I feel amazing. What does it mean I'm not fully recovered? And I went and did a workout, and literally a couple minutes into the workout, I felt gassed. I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this workout? Because I didn't want to listen to it. I didn't think I needed a day off, because our bodies can really trick us into thinking, let's optimize performance because you need to perform. And that happens a lot in top level athletes, because if we think about baseball players, Dezi, there's 180 games, right? There are 162 games plus playoffs. You need to be ready every day, right? Yeah. No days off mentality. And the Whoop could actually tell us like, hey, we have a pitcher that needs this extra off day to perform better, or we can actually put them back in the rotation because they're optimally recovered. So I think that was a cool way we were using Whoop with the organization I was with, and then with the athletes I work with.
Yeah, and I think like there's really interesting things about it, because I've started to learn like, how do you interpret it, for example, when you're in the red, which means like you basically have low recovery. Does it mean you can't train that day? And what I've started to understand is actually doesn't necessarily mean that. Doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot push yourself, but it just basically means that your body's not primed in this moment. If you keep pushing it too much, you're eventually going to kind of like hit that sort of like that plateau that is not ideal. And I wanted to show, since we're obviously kind of showing this also on YouTube, and if you're listening to this, I'm just going to describe it as the best as possible. I'm literally going to show like a screen share of like my current like Whoop screens, because in the computer actually looks a lot cooler than on the phone. But essentially, one of the coolest things that I realized when I did this, I'm gonna actually refer back to like a specific time frame. It was like kind of like towards the end of May, where my recovery was terrible. So it was like from like this day right here, so Friday, May 28th, and it never actually I think it was like closer to like 2 weeks. And I was like, what is going on? So what realized, and then you can kind of see a complete change, like obviously of the course, like, the month of like June, and a lot of improvement. One of the things that were actually happening back then is like the fact that we started like getting hooked into this like show on Netflix. And what I was actually happening is not only I was going to bed super late, but also the amount of like light that I was being exposed to was actually definitely affecting my quality of sleep. So I wanted to see this, and I was like, okay, so you know what, we're going to change. We're not going to watch any kind of TV anymore until like from Monday through Friday. So when bedtime comes, like we're going to try to keep things off, and we're going to see obviously how that makes us feel. Immediate kind of change. And obviously you're starting to see an immediate, because of the fact that I was actually improving my sleep. So obviously when you go back to like the past month, there's a lot more green bars if you're seeing this on YouTube compared to obviously dot bars that are either red or yellow. So, which basically means recovery is slow. Whoop, or there's a lot of these technologies that essentially are taking a lot of the information, not only from like your heart rate, but at the same time, like the amount of sleep, and they're compiling into an algorithm that kind of gives you a recovery standard or like a recovery reading. So a lot of times if you have really poor sleep, but your heart rate variability is high, is going to say that your recovery is still not the greatest because of the fact that you didn't get enough sleep. So it basically kind of like measures some of the stuff. It helps you understand where you're at. And the newest feature, which is actually related to like, it's cool, like from the biohacking standpoint to understand like what could be going on from like the health standpoint, is your respiratory rate, as you mentioned, Nate. A recent report from a golfer right now, I think I saw it on the Whoop Instagram page, a professional golfer, PGA Tour athlete. He actually started to see that his respiratory rate started to actually increase like exponentially, like for the period of like 4 to 5 days. And what he did, I was like, this is really weird. I don't feel bad, but I'm going to go get tested. And he, in fact, actually had COVID-19. So this has been shown as a really good way to predict sometimes when there's changes. I'm not going to say that I had COVID, but then when I got back from a trip in March, it was when everything kind of like went crazy. And I did have a fever over one night, like I think like 2 or so days later. And for 3 days, my what's it called? My respiratory rate was actually elevated. I'm not saying that I had it, but it's something that it makes me really reflect back and think, did something actually happen? So this is really cool, interesting data that sometimes like we kind of like look at, and some people get it, but they don't understand it. They just kind of look like, okay, red, clean, yellow. And honestly, I would encourage people listening to this, if you own a Whoop, to go and listen to their podcast, because they do have a lot of educational resources as to how you need to interpret some of this data. Because some people they look at the red as like, I can't work out today. And it doesn't always mean that. It's just essentially looking at understanding trends. And now you can do like journal. You can put in there like whenever you like wear blue light blocking glasses. Like I started experimenting with CBD recently because we got this from like this specific company. So we're like, okay, let's figure out how this is affecting my sleep. So I'm into that kind of stuff because I like data. I like numbers. I'm number driven because I'm a nerd like that. And I think it definitely kind of helps you reflect on some of those different things and figure out what can you change and what can you improve. So I just thought it would be kind of like interesting to share some of those different areas.
Can you actually pull up your recovery again, Andres?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually just bought one while you were talking about this.
For real?
We're gonna be.
Did you not use our code? You could have used our code and give us a month for free, Nate, or because I'm sure you're not gonna give it to me, but I'm sure like maybe Tony and Nate, you could have got him a month for free.
They had a promo for $30 off, so here we go. We're good.
Whoop journal.
So recovery.
Yeah. Go back the 3 months you had. Look at that Sunday, June 7th. Huh. Just like Nate, low recovery. Huh.
Was this the day after your birthday?
That was our whiskey.
The 6th was actually the day after.
So
and it was an 8. No, back one because it was on a Friday. You guys came over Friday because you guys went out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it went down to 31 and 33% those mornings. So yep.
Mine was a 9. Come on, man, you didn't go hard enough.
Well,
But it explains like there's like alcohol
Yeah.
has a massive impact on this entire process, and I think it definitely makes a something to really think about.
well, Andres, you were talking about watching the show later. I didn't hear the time that you guys started to go to bed. What
Yeah.
time did
So
you start to say like again? Say it
well,
again.
this is what's interesting. So we were going to bed maybe like at 11, sometimes 11:30. So and we typically go to bed at 10. Now, when I compared the days that I watched TV to the days that I didn't watch TV, but I still went to bed at around the same time, my sleep quality was better. And
Yeah.
my sleep, like at the amount of time that I was like in REM sleep, and my recovery was usually better.
Yeah.
So this is also a huge area. You see biohackers, and you'll know a biohacker or like quote unquote biohacker because they're wearing blue light blocking glasses. And I know Tony has some, and I know like Nate, you also have some too. That yeah, we all have a pair of like blue light blocking glasses,
Dezi has some too.
and and uh, and those basically what that does is kind of blocks some of like the blue rays. Not, it doesn't block light, it blocks the specific blue rays that penetrate in your cornea and like your eyes, that are essentially kind of sending signals to your brain to say it's daylight. And obviously when your body senses that it's still daylight, and this is honestly something this is another big problem that I noticed too. Whenever time changes from when we get into the summer and it's light a lot later, my sleep cycle is typically moved. So I'm like super awake, and I started realizing this year that like I have like more of a racing mind, and I realized this because like it just got dark like 2 hours ago. So your body works in cycles, and it's very well regulated by like the amount of light that you're exposed to. Like if you take out all artificial light that exists in the 21st century, like before the light bulb even existed, before even like, like candles and all kinds of stuff like that, the only way that we were able to kind of regulate our sleep cycles was based on what? On when it was night,
Sun.
when it was
Mhm.
day. Like literally that's the only thing like you could kind of like base it all off of. So now we have a lot of this artificial kind of exposure to things that I think obviously affect those things. And I've realized that it can definitely affect your sleep quality, and with that your recovery. And as we kind of turn this around on nutrition, it can definitely, we talked about in the past, it can affect how your metabolism is working. You could be losing the wrong type of weight. You
Mhm.
could be eating a lot more unconsciously. There's so many different things that impacts this. So that's
Yeah.
another
No,
big part.
this will be interesting too. Again, I just bought it, so we'll see how taking a look at the data. But I have a lot of my clients using Sleep Cycle, so I think it's
That
like
one.
$30 subscription. But it's probably not likely not as accurate as the Whoop, but it's taking a look at the time that they go to bed, their breathing, any type of movement, time they wake up, and it gives them that qualitative score. And I do think it's very interesting that when we introduce a bit of regularity with at least bedtime and those behaviors like Andres, like you were talking about, like TV before bed and not TV, it's amazing their qualitative score. They might after a 7-day period have like be in the 60s, and they're wondering why they're dragging
Mhm.
ass and why they seemingly have plateaued. We start to work on those things 4 weeks later. It's like, oh, I feel great, crushing my workouts, eating better, hormonally, like if this feels great. So like, it is funny that utilizing some of these things can be so incredibly helpful, and working with someone who knows this stuff is so incredibly helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think also from like the other things that people are doing from like the biohacking standpoint that I've gotten into, like even things like meditation. It's nothing like, oh, like this is something new, but it's like, okay, you're trying to kind of hack into the way that your brain is working, like your mindset, like how you're kind of trying to become more present, to try to like, for example, I was having a conversation with a client yesterday, and they were talking about he's 64 years old. He goes to Aspie, where one of the places I used to work at here. And he told me, it's like, is there a way to manage my blood pressure without medication? I was like, well, I can't really answer that. But one thing I can tell you, you can certainly manage your heart rate. And the best way to do that, and the way that I have, like, there's a lot of research to support this, to control anxiety and things like that, is like meditative practices, box
Mhm.
breathing, like conscious, like, efforts in the inner breathing. So these are smaller things that can certainly kind of help you in one way, shape, or form to actually improve how your blood pressure actually can work. So this is what we talk about biohacking: is figure out how you can optimize your health, and things in ways that you're not really adding like medications or pharmacological like kind of treatments, but just simply doing things a little bit different. Of course, there are other things like infrared saunas. Those are like a typical thing also in the biohacking world that not a lot of people talking about. There's actually a full summit once a year that literally like breaks. Like I would love to go to one because I think it's crazy to see. I think it's
in like Finland or something, I think.
there's
The
one in
The
Biohacker
Mind
Finland,
Valley
Summit.
one?
Biohacker Summit, but then there's another one in
Oh, okay.
Austin. In Austin, there's like a one that is it. I don't remember what it is. It's sort of like in the keto space and whatever, but then they have turned it a lot into like the biohacking kind of arena, and you have a lot of people talking about this stuff. You know how they're using a lot of this data and a lot of like this quantitative stuff. Like you talk about, I think like his name is like Wim Hof. Like you talk about like cold exposure and how you can actually control your brain to be able, like, this is the guy that like have like been literally what's it called, like I think he was like froze on a block or something with like an actual like
Yeah, I
ice.
think he stayed in like 9-10 minutes or something crazy. Have you done his breathing technique?
No, but I know it's one of those biohacking things that they're kind of teaching.
It's extremely interesting because you're supposed to be taking these really, really, really deep breaths, and then you hold your breath for as long as you can, and then you like really exhale, and then you take another deep breath, and then you hold, and it's definitely a mind game. It's like kind of pushing your body and your mind's limits to where you didn't think it could go. So if you haven't done it, he has an app that I think is actually pretty cool too. So check it out. It's freaking dope.
Yeah, but it's those things, and I think we talked about this in the past, like cold exposure and all these different things that they could be positive, but again, like when we're talking about biohacking, we're not really talking too much about like the whole like fat loss, weight loss aspect. It's just simply ways that you can kind of optimize that it can help in that process too. So I just kind of like the way that I think about it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's actually really cool. I'm looking up this guy now because I didn't even know about him.
Wim Hof, he's super known. He does like have like seminars and trainings in which he takes people to like really cold areas, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go on a hike, and everybody's like in shorts and sometimes not even shoes. Most of the time, sometimes like he puts like on boots on, but they're like without a shirt, like just wearing shorts in like minus something degree weather, and he's like, let's do it. So he kind of teaches breathing techniques and all these different things. So he has a book that he wrote a bunch of
he's super interesting. I came across him sending some YouTube videos to clients, and I started super interesting.
He's done two crazy things. Like I know he ran like a marathon like sort of distance in a desert without one lick of water, and something insane, like you can read about it. And he's done like the two extremes like that, and then also the second one, which was like I think he spent so many hours or days in like cold without wearing anything, like literally just in the cold for a specific amount of time. He has world records, of course, but it just basically kind of teaches how he does it and how he manages his brain and some of those different areas. So I mean, it's just interesting things to. Again, we're not saying here to just go and like run a marathon in a desert without water or.
Absolutely not. That's like my mortal enemy. Hydrate or dihydrate. Mr. Dihydrate for real. What the heck?
You met your match, bro.
Yeah.
Mind games. But yeah, it's interesting. And it just kind of, it's a new, different kind of like open area of like, here's a problem though. I think there's a lot of people that try to like use this biohacking techniques, and I think they're well thought, like, or like they do it for the right reasons, but they're doing it on a very weak foundation. So there's a lot of CEOs of companies and like stuff like that they start to create all this like biohacking techniques without even trying to, for example, they're coming up from like a background of like poor eating habits and stuff like that. And it goes back to the same kind of like thing of like fat dieting. It's like, you're trying to, sure, like I think it's helpful. I think I support it, honestly. But then if you're going to focus on this biohacking techniques, also focus on the nutritional piece. Now, there are nutritional biohackers that are like thinking, and this is where you're going to have your primal eaters, which is like sort of like paleo. Like primal eaters don't like to think about like primal eating. They don't like to talk to be referred to as paleo. So essentially primal eating is like eating more like our ancestors, and obviously more things from the ground, which is a sort of like a way to describe paleo. Or people that are saying like that the best, most optimized way to actually use fuel in our body is through like ketosis. So then you're going to have that kind of school of thought. They're not necessarily following keto as a diet. They're just following as a way of living, which that's the thing that kind of like, I not necessarily say I would support, but I was like, if you're going to do this as a way to, because you want to turn this into a lifestyle, I'm going to be like, okay. But it's the problem is like with people that kind of turn out as like keto as a diet, or this is a diet, or this is a diet to like lose weight and blah, blah, blah. That's when the kind of the problem becomes. But that's something that I tend to see all the time, because I literally had conversations with CEOs of companies and places like that where they talk to me. It's like, oh, I do this. And I take like this thing, and I do the bulletproof, and I do all these different things. Like, why do you do those things? Oh, I heard like this podcast, or I heard this thing. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
but then you're still eating like crap. So we gotta like go back to like, small steps first, because those things are not going to undo other areas in your nutrition or your life that you need to improve on,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Facts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, something interesting to think about. Anything else you guys wanted to share?
I mean, I'm currently doing another biohack. Well, I think there's two things I want to ask. So first, do we consider calorie counting or macro tracking biohacking? Because you're using some sort of biometric to monitor what you're eating and how it's affecting you, number one. Number two, I'm using the glucose monitor, so that's a different form of biohacking, and I wanted to discuss a little bit. But I want to start with that question first, and we can obviously do another episode another time. Especially because Andres is going to do a 5-day fast, and I'm going to beat him in a CrossFit competition. But that's another.
Is it 5 day? I thought it was 7.
5.
Okay.
Make it 7. I think I heard 7.
I want to see this, because he flexed his big brain muscles when we were last together. Like, well, you don't know what I know. He did clean 250 the other day, and I was like, damn, okay.
Yeah.
I ain't cleaning that.
285.
285. Sorry.
Get your fats right, Dezi.
All right.
Wow. That's why you weren't added in, Dezi.
Yeah. I was just worried about the hip hinge. Like, dude, oh my God. About to throw your back out, man.
Boy.
I was impressed.
I'll share my 2 cents. Like, first, macro tracking, calorie counting. I think that's something that has been done before even apps existed, has been done on paper. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily think it's like a biohack. I think it's just a tool to create awareness around your nutrition and what you're consuming, and understand, okay, like how much. And for people that are data driven, like I am, like I love numbers, it definitely kind of helps me have more control. And for a lot of people, I think it does. But I think the stuff that you're doing, because like where your glucose monitoring, that's something new. Because it's always been for diabetics that are using just like to understand, okay, how much, like, and they would just like pinch themselves,
insulin,
or whenever they had the insulin pump, they can see that in real time. But now people are doing it just for like the purpose of understanding how their blood sugar fluctuations are happening throughout the day. And people that don't even have diabetes, in your case, like it's just to understand how you respond to specific food. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Because so going back to what you said, it's a tool for awareness about nutrition, but aren't all these biohacking tools a tool for awareness, right? Like the Whoop is an awareness tool. We're trying to understand our sleep. We're trying to understand our recovery. So wouldn't that fall into the same, just because it's not an app before when it was done on paper, you're still building an awareness of something and you're trying to change your body somehow. So wouldn't you consider that a biohack? This is just me.
Yeah, I think you could. But then if you look at other things, for example, mindfulness, like you're creating awareness around your mindset, but then it's not really something that you're tracking unless you're kind of like using some sort of like brainwave stuff. Or if you're looking at infrared saunas, it's not like you're measuring the amount of like exposure you get into something. You just get in and get exposed to it. So I think it depends on, in my opinion, on what you're actually like measuring. And how can you like, get some of this, like, that's like, but I think a lot of like, let's just put it this way. I do believe that a lot of the biohacking stuff, it's data, it's measured.
Yeah.
It can be measured. And when it can be measured, it's something that kind of it's a awareness creation to help you understand like blood work and all this different stuff to understand some things. But I don't think all biohacking methods, or that are considered what we call biohacking, are necessarily like using numbers or like data like that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else that you guys wanted to add? I think this was a pretty cool, interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you guys are listening to this, and either you're watching it or listening to in the podcast, let us know what you think, or say hi. Feel free to actually send us a comment. Reach out to each individual one of us via Instagram or whatever. So the show notes are going to be down or the links are going to be down in the show notes. And you can reach out to us directly. And if you have any suggestions and things that we should definitely cover in our Chit Chat series, please let us know. See you guys in the next one. See you guys. Take care.